Hi there. If the following free content proves to be useful to you, please consider liking the video, subscribing, and checking out the pinned comment down below for more options to support my efforts. Thank you for watching, and please enjoy the video. Alright, so Bassam asks, should I learn Android based on what I need for my app, or using some guides like books and courses? He's hit a brick wall in terms of how to progress in learning. Sorry, my throat is really jacked up today. I do apologize about that. So this is a wonderful general question. I love questions like this because A, they mean they're so open-ended that I can babble about anything and it might be useful to certain people. But B, this is so important because Bassam is asking, like, how do I friggin' learn how to make Android apps? Like, what is the best way to do it? What is the most efficient way to learn? So here's my basic, here's my thoughts on this. So I have kind of a unique experience when it comes to Android development. So a lot of all my regular viewers know this, but I only have one class from college of programming. That's the extent of my post-secondary education. And I have never taken a paid course in Android. I've never paid and done like a full course. The way that I learned Android in the beginning is that from square one, I said to myself, all right, I need a project. I need something I want to build and use, both as a developer and as the user of the application. Incidentally, that application was Catalyst, which is from the example from before. It wasn't called Catalyst, and it was ugly as sin the first 5 times I built it. But that was what I said to myself, I want to build this project. That turned out to be one of the smartest decisions I friggin' ever made as a developer. And the reason why is that I've always had a lot of difficulty tricking myself into learning something unless I know exactly where I'm going to apply it and why it is relevant. I don't know why exactly, but like here's a great example. So this is one of my favorite books in software development, Design Patterns Explained. And I've never read it cover to cover. I read bits of books like this, and I'll read parts that are relevant to me. But I've never been someone who like goes through the whole textbook and writes notes and everything. There are people out there, actually I'll get to that part later. But yeah, that's always been my thing, because if I were to try and force myself to sit down and just go chapter to chapter, which I might do eventually because this thing is becoming so relevant to what I do, but just in general, like, let's say you bought a huge tome on Android development. It gives you 10 different tiny little apps to build. And you say to if I were to say to myself, hey, I'm going to go through all of these apps, I'm going to build all of them, and then I'll build my own applications, I'm sure I would have failed at doing that. Why? And I'm also sure for me that it would have made me have a much harder time remembering the information. And I'm someone that actually has a generally poor memory for details, as probably a lot of you have noticed. I remember concepts very well. I remember details very poorly. So the best thing that I did was I said to myself, I'm going to build this application. And instead of I did view a couple really basic tutorials, but I had trouble even building those because it was like, well, this is not what I want to build. And instead what I did was I dove into my project and I would ask myself questions. All right, I'm building a workout log. I don't know, like, I barely know anything about programming, let alone Android, let alone application design, but I'm pretty sure this thing's going to need to save data. How do I save data? And then I did some research and I arrived that the easiest way for me to save data at the time would be to write to an XML file on the hard drive of the on the disk of the device, and then use XML pull parser to like grab data and parse it and store it, which was a really horrible way to do that. And then for the user interface, I only learned things which were directly like problems I was trying to, like I would think of a design and I'd be like, how do I build this design? And then no idea, I didn't know how other people built apps. Material design wasn't out at that point, so there wasn't so cohesive of a way to design apps. Compared to nowadays anyways. And longer story shorter, all I did was I built this crappy application using really just not knowing what to do, and I just kept rebuilding the same application over and over and over again. I didn't read any books. I've never read an Android development book. I've read tiny bits of some ebooks. I've never taken a course, blah, blah, blah. I've said that a couple times. Do I think that is the best way to learn, the fastest way to learn Android development? Not necessarily. And unfortunately, my answer to this question is going to be very vague, because the thing about it is different people learn different ways. You've got different interests, you've got different motivation levels, you've got different attention spans. Mine's generally very short. And you're going to need to figure out what works for you. So my first suggestion is do actually listen to your own instincts. So that's the first thing. Make your own process. In your, I believe you asked this question, a longer version of this question in comments, and what you were saying is that you bounce around, I'm speaking to Bassam here, you bounce around to books and courses and videos and all this different stuff, and you feel like you're just maybe dispersed. There's a lack of a specific process. My suggestion for you is to actually just keep doing that for a couple of months. Keep doing that and you will learn what works for you. I think I know what you're going through, which is a general feeling of being like overwhelmed and just there's so much stuff to learn in Android and programming. There's so much crap. What do you focus on? Like, what do I do here? Struggle through it. Carry on and try and develop your own process. Now, one thing that I will say, and I'll try and wrap this up because I've been really rambling on this question, and this is really key here. I do strongly suggest for every new developer to pick a project which you want to build, and to build that project and to use the problems and topics of that project as a kind of guide system. This will do a number of things. It will ground your learning and increase the number of, I think, modalities. It'll increase the number of learning modalities for, I think I misspelled modalities, but whatever, for the information you are taking in. So what does that mean in English? What it means is that I've taken a couple different courses on cognition. I'm not an expert in it, but I know some stuff about it. And my really short example here is that if you put, let's say I have like 6 rooms, 6 rooms full of like 30 people or whatever, 10 people. 6 rooms, 10 people. And what your goal is you give each of these 6 rooms the same material, and you give them a test, and you see how well they retain the information. In room number 1, all the people do is they read the information off of a page, and then they get handed a test. In room number 2, they read the information, and then they write it down word for word. They just copy the information. Room number 3, they read it, and they copy it down in their own words. They re-explain the information. Room number 4, they read it, they write it down in their own words, and then they explain it to someone else. Whatever, 5 and 6, I don't really care. The point of this, the key takeaway here is that if you look at the test of each room, the retention rate will increase. The more learning modalities, the more you work with the information. That was a creepy fondling gesture. Anyways, the more you work with the information, the more different things you do with it, the more parts of your brain you involve in it, the more you will learn the information. So I do not suggest you read tutorials and just like write stuff down. I suggest you have projects. If you have a new API you're learning, this is something I always do. When I was learning RxJava, I built a demo RxJava app. When I was learning Firebase, I built a demo Firebase app, an isolated little application. And the reason for that is that if you can't get those things to work in isolation, your likelihood of getting them to work in a complex application is much lower. So I've kind of gone all over the place here, but in general, what I would say is ground your learning with a project as much as possible. Learn things based on that project. However, once you've got like your first main project done and you're kind of a little more comfortable, the next thing is to start building projects which use industry standard technologies. So now that I've got like my basic to-do list app or whatever, my workout log, all right, cool, I've got the basics done. And you can follow kind of a tutorial for the basics if that's your thing, or you can follow a book, or you can do whatever. You can look at source code is really good. Once you're beyond there, now you're going to build projects based on the things you want to learn. Because you're more comfortable and you're going to say, all right, I want to learn RxJava because like literally everyone who knows like anything about Android can write RxJava. I want to learn room persistence library. Then you start going about it that way. So hopefully that kind of roundabout answers your question.